The second annual Governor Cellucci Tribute Road Race is this weekend. To get a sense of something special Paul Cellucci had, consider this. As a Republican in this overwhelmingly blue state, he never lost an election in over 3 decades in politics, including service in his hometown of Hudson, both the state House and Senate, as lieutenant governor under Bill Weld, remember Welducci, then succeeding Weld in '97 and serving until 2001 when he resigned to become U.S. ambassador to Canada. In 2011, he announced publicly he'd been diagnosed with ALS, and he died of complications from the disease 2 years later. He was a special kind of public servant, and that may be why I think I got a little overzealous when I entered into an agreement with the current governor last week on my Boston Public Radio show.
Right now,
Okay,
right
fine.
here, I will make a deal with you. If you will run this race with me next year, I will run it with you.
It's a
if
deal.
you run as part of the Baker
It's a
Polito
deal.
team,
It's a deal.
we
I have
are
to
in.
be part of the Baker. Okay, I will. Okay.
Deal.
Uh-oh. We're still in discussions about the team name, but joining me now is the director of the Governor Cellucci Tribute Road Race, the proceeds from which go to the UMass ALS Cellucci Fund. That'd be Jan Cellucci, Paul Cellucci's high school girlfriend and wife. That's amazing. Jan, it's great to meet you. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I knew your husband a little bit, maybe a little bit more vibrant, active, physical, movie-going for 60 years of his life. When he gets this diagnosis, what was the immediate reaction from you and him? How'd you deal with this?
Well, it's devastating. I mean, you pray that it's something else. And everyone that is facing this goes through the process of, with a physician, of eliminating everything else. But Paul, being Paul, quickly came to the conclusion of what it was. I'm a librarian. I researched enough to do all the things that you shouldn't do. But the remarkable thing, Jim, is that once diagnosed, at the very next appointment with Dr. Brown, literally 2 or 3 days later,
Yeah, from UMass, yeah.
he asked Dr. Brown, what can I do to support you? I'm a former governor. I signed the legislation for UMass to become a research.
Yeah. But that's what I don't get. A guy spends his whole life in public service.
Mm-hmm.
He finally comes back from being an ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back and he decides to dedicate the rest of his life to a different kind of public service. I mean, it's wonderful, but why? I mean,
I have no idea. When he offered this to Dr. Brown, I almost wanted to, cause a scene in the doctor's office.
and he pledged to raise $10 million. The first race was last year, right?
Yes.
And was it not, didn't I read somewhere it was either 2 days before or 2 days after something, the Ice Bucket Challenge
Yes.
went public. So how does that intersect? I mean, Nancy Frates was here a couple of weeks ago, the mother of Pete, who's just spectacular. How do you intersect?
Well, this race that is happening on Saturday is specifically to raise research funds for UMass Medical, for the UMass ALS Cellucci Fund. And the Ice Bucket Challenge really burst onto the scene without a definite aim of where the money was going to go.
So yours is focused to this one particular place. How hard is it to raise money when there are a million wonderful causes
It's
these
hard.
days?
It's hard, but I will tell you that Paul gained enormous respect from a lot of people. And I think that they recognized his courage in going back into public life with a terminal diagnosis.
How do you know? I read you've been a librarian all your life. You get on these national library boards, even in Canada when you weren't allowed to work. I guess you were doing library stuff. How do you become a race director? How do you know what you're doing?
You should have the race director who designed the course with me.
Well, you are the de facto race director
but
here. You're a hands-on race director.
Absolutely. But the gentleman who designed the course should be here too, because he'd be hilariously laughing right now.
That you're doing this.
Oh, yes, yes.
Do you worry at all that your husband, I did know him pretty well from, not personally, but professionally, I know him quite. Do you worry he'll be remembered more about how he died rather than how he lived? Because he did a lot of pretty amazing things.
I agree, but Paul was most focused on wanting to take this diagnosis and doing the best he could with it. And he was firmly of the belief that your deeds and whatever you have attempted to achieve in office will, reach its level in history at the time. But he wasn't focused on my legacy or
You know, one of the things I love, I mean, he was a Hudson kid, born there, and goes to all these grand places, including a 32-room ambassador's mansion. I read all about it in Canada.
Right.
Then he comes home. I mean, you couldn't take the kid out of Hudson, and you couldn't take Hudson out of the kid, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us,
Absolutely.
what kind of progress are they making? I know you've raised a couple of $1 million so far. How are they doing down there?
We're actually at $3.5 million.
Oh, you are? Oh, that's
Yes.
great, yeah.
Yeah, and an important fact is that just in the last year, we've had close to 2,000 new donors to the fund. But the research that's happening there is on 2 tracks, both aiming for effective therapies and for a cure. And it's truly the epicenter of ALS research.
Now, the good and the bad news is I hear the race is sold out. But the bad news is if you want more information and want to contribute, there's a place they can go?
Yes.
What is it?
The UMass ALS Cellucci Fund. It's umassals.com.
Great. It's great to see you, John. Pleasure to meet you. Your husband was quite a man, I should say.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to see you.